Good night, everyone. It's, I guess, a penultimate game or one of the major games, an elimination game at least for the World Series. We are, I guess, nearing the end of the comic book year with some amazing titles coming out, and we have two amazing guests. We have Omar from Wayside up in Newmarket, just a little bit north of Toronto, and we've got Carlos returning again from Gotham Central Comics and Collectibles, I guess to the left of Toronto. So, how's everyone doing?
To the left, let's go a
To the
little
left?
west of Toronto. West.
If I'm north,
Okay.
does that make me?
No,
I-
we're not going. We're not politics. Just
I lean
directionally
center.
west.
West.
Yes.
I'm center.
Politics? What the hell are you talking about?
Well, left, right? Left
Comics,
versus
man.
right.
Man,
It's
I
the
walked
end
into
of
the wrong stream. What the hell?
Yeah, you just at the end of the comic season, and we still got 2 full months to do. We got November, December. Now we got to deal with Diamond and closing up their shipping platforms, shipping warehouses close to the border. So we got another added headache to our wonderful life as comic book retailers, right, Omar? Tell me about it.
100%, man. It's not easy being a Canadian comic retailer, and like I feel the same way about anybody like overseas, man. The U.S. has it easy.
I disagree. I got a lot of friends in the U.S. and it's pretty hard sailing there too, right? It's a bigger market. Don't forget, I think Canada only makes up about less than 2% of the actual comic book market in retail space in North America. So
Yeah.
I don't even know how many shops. How many shops do we have in Canada? You ever did that, Steve? You ever count?
No,
how
I
many?
never. I've never done the numbers. Right. I would argue that Southern Ontario probably has the greatest collection of it.
Pretty much,
Of
yeah.
them, just because of our population. And when you think of like what's Canada, 33 million from coast to coast,
44 probably now with
right? Right. So
44.
if you look at it that way, we're the population of New York State or California,
And, oh wow, yeah, that's pretty much, yeah.
right?
So,
So
so
I can see us
2%.
being 2%,
2% or less.
right?
And then we're not counting Quebec in there because they're not part of Canada, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
they are
Just-
definitely part of Canada. Les Canadiens sont là if you like hockey.
Oh, no. Screw the Habs.
It's all good. So, Carlos, you did touch on it before we get into Spider-Man 94. What's this about Diamond? I know we spoke about it a little bit earlier this week, but if you and Omar can kind of give us the details, that'd be great.
Well, I guess Monday or Sunday night, I got an email. Now, Diamond has decided to close their Plattsburgh warehouses, which is in New York State and I believe Pennsylvania, which is going to affect Canada's comic deliveries from Diamond, where we used to pick up at specific pickup points. And now everything's going to be through either Canpar, FedEx, UPS from Diamond. So costs of shipping go up, costs for us retailers go up. It's just another wrinkle, I don't know, headache that we have to deal with as retailers in Canada. So we're already dealing with 4 or 5 distributors for comic books, probably more in some cases, but yeah. So that just as of November, I believe 19th is our last shipment, our last pickup, and then now we got to go. I don't even know how it's going to work, to be honest. So,
Wow. Okay, that's pretty crazy. And Omar, how's that going to affect you?
Honestly, it hasn't really affected us too much because everything we get is through shipping. It's just more like just seeing shipping costs go up from when we started. Again, we're still a relatively new shop. We just hit our 1-year anniversary.
congrats.
Kind of happened silently,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so far not affected us. But again, I know from other people that it does hit them a lot harder.
Yeah. For a shop
Okay.
like me, where we're getting a skid and a half of product every week, almost 2 skids. When we go to a pickup point, that our shipments is almost half of Ontario shipments at drop point, and how Diamond packs products, where you get a box and it has 1 book in it, where they can combine. So if that's going to elevate costs to about $40, $50, $60 a box, and I'm getting one box with one book in it,
Right.
and paying that freight, just makes no sense. So I think, I don't know who Omar deals with, but I'm already converting most of my business back to Canada just to save on money. So using Canadian distributors and out of Quebec, out of Ontario. So it's the way we got to go.
Yeah, we've been using Universal a lot recently. It's
Yeah.
definitely helping keep our costs a little bit down, especially with Canadian shipping, because the shipping is pretty harsh. Especially, like, I love Lunar; they package everything really well and they get stuff to you pretty quick. But those shipping bills, they come in like hard and fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't wait at all, eh? That's it's a tough biz for sure. But you guys are the lifeblood of the industry, and not only for comics but also for collectibles. Because unless you're like Jay and you're able to, and his crew, where you're able to go to places like Ross and get some stuff, some of these LCSs are the spots where you get a lot of the hard to find toys.
No, 100%. The small the guys, everyone should support small comic shops. Your local, sorry, not small comic shop, local comic shops. They're the lifeblood of the comic industry, as well as, of course, action figures and collectibles. I mean, like, if you definitely can't find it at any of the big box stores like GameStop, Walmart, because they do not supply action figures in the regular or even in the shape that you want them to be. I mean, your local comic shop is going to make sure that it comes in pristine. The boxes are collectible, and for all you inbox collectors, I mean, that's where you want to be. And of course, it's just nice to talk to the guys. Catch up. Find out about what's new on the racks, and what else you can expect in the next couple of weeks. I mean, where else are you going to get this kind of stuff?
Yeah, totally. Sorry, go ahead, Carlos.
Oh, yeah, and like Jay was saying, yeah, it's always good to support always your local shops. Always shop local. We're a big supporter of shopping and supporting all the local shops around town. It's good to have competition, and it's tough for everybody. We want everybody to be happy. You look at GameStop or EB Games. You're dealing with 600-700 stores across North America. All they have to order is one case each to get these maximum discounts, where a store like me orders 6 cases and we don't even come close to discounts towards what EB Game offers or GameStop or Walmart, stuff like that. So for us, we start cutting back a little bit, because how are you going to compete when you buy a brand new product in toys, and Jay goes over to Ross and then they have the same toys there a week, 2 weeks later for $5 Give me a fucking break, man. How do we, especially here, you go to Dollarama and you're paying $20 for a fucking toy, and Dollarama has it for whatever, $1 to $3. It's crazy. So for us retailers, we just thought it turns us off. We don't want to deal with that. And I guess I'm a little bitter because, this week we got a 2-star review, Google, from a longtime customer, which I don't know who he is, because he shops there. He says, great store. And he gives a 2-star because we don't have any new action figures that he wants. But we have lots of action figures. And I'm like, is this guy missing our new toy videos that we put out every week of all the new toys that comes out? And so go rate a shop 2 out of 5 because they don't have action figures that please you. You know what I'm saying?
That is a terrible. Who the hell is that guy? That is ridiculous.
With reviews, man, that's the worst. Is that people only leave negativity usually. It's like that guy probably has had nothing but good experiences at your shop, and like the one time he's like, there's nothing new. He decides to leave a review, but like every other time he's been there, he's probably like, it's been great.
Go read a review. How do you go to a shop and you go? I go to many stores, and if I have a great experience, I leave a good review. If it's a bad experience and I fucking hate it, they're gonna get a 1-star, 2-star because I just hate it. But if it's mediocre, I'm not going to give them a review just because maybe it's a bad day. So you go to a store and you say, hey, great shop, big space, lots of selection, but it feels like I'm seeing the same stuff over and over again, 2-star, which is bullshit because, Steve, you were there yesterday. You see how much shit we get on a weekly basis. It's just now my ordering lines are closer, where before I would like to order an extra case or two for, now we order a little bit closer so we can sell out. and then if I can get more, I'll get more. People don't understand the figures sit. You go count 20 figures on my wall, 30, 40 figures, add up the costs at $20 a pop, let's say 22 bucks. It's easily you can add up $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 worth of product just sitting there, because, so what am I supposed to do as a retailer? I have to scale back a little bit, or else I'll be product rich and cash poor, and it's a sad state. That's what comic shops are. Product rich, cash poor, most of the time. We're the ones taking the risk in the industry, man. Every week we got to guess. Should we order 100 copies, 1,000 copies of this book? And if the book doesn't sell, we're the ones stuck with that product, right?
Okay, so let's get into that because before we hit the Spider-Man, I was looking for the Dan Panosian Wonder Woman, absolute Wonder Woman. The cover is, thank you very much. It is a banger cover. It's beautiful. I reached out online and I told them that this cover is fire. I didn't realize it was a 1 in 25. Am I getting that ratio right?
Yeah, it's a 1 in 25 ratio.
And I didn't realize that the cost is remarkably different when it's that kind of a ratio. So when it comes to trying to figure out, and I'll throw this one to Omar first, and then Carlos, you can jump in. When it comes to figuring out how much of a particular issue to get, cover A, cover B, rare variant, what kind of mental gymnastics and numbers do you guys kind of refer to know what to get?
That's been a hard one to navigate for us because every shop is different, and you really have to see what your customer base does. Like when we first started the shop, we were ordering really heavy on some titles that in other places I feel like would do really well. I always say it's weird. I have one Pull List X-Men customer here, which is blows my mind every time. But you kind of have to just adapt to what the situation is. Like Carlos said about collectibles, like I'd much rather sell out than just have stock sitting there. So you just have to be tight with it. And it's one of those things. I know other comic shops are doing it too. They're just ordering less. And it's one of those, if you want it, put it on a pull list. Support your shop that way so they know how much to order. That's an important thing because it lets us budget. It lets us know what the interest actually is, and we'll order more books or less books. We take a lot of risks, like Carlos was saying as well. Like we never know. So that's kind of something that I've really been circumnavigating. And I am moving to a no more than like a couple of your standard books that I know sell on the wall, but pretty much pull lists thing in the new year, because that's the only real way to save money. Like the thing about back issues that anybody who has a comic collection knows how fast short boxes become long boxes and how much space long boxes take up. And then when you're ordering product every week, because that's the thing, this isn't an industry where you order once a month or seasonally, you order every week. And you have to hope that everything's ordered a month and a half in advance. And you got to hope you got your finger on the pulse. And if your shipment's late by a week, like I've had a DC shipment that's been sitting there for 3 weeks with no movement. And suddenly I'm like, okay, well, I know those image books now aren't going to sell to like the person walking through. But like my absolutes, for example, suddenly all the people have asked me for them. They all got allocated really quick. Thankfully, they came in and they got to be pushed out, which helps me understand what's going on. But for all my other books, I'm pretty much stuck with them because, again, a lot of them lose heat as things come out. It's still a speculator's market at the end of the day.
Oh, not as much. The speculator market kind of died down probably about 2-3 years ago with COVID and prior. That's like in our store, a lot of speculators have gone to the wayside. Hey, anyway, so as Omar was saying,
and sorry, I think the word I use is wrong there. I think what I mean to say is like the books we want to support, because like the thing is you also order books that you want to put, you want to like see on the shelves, or you want to try and get in other people's hands, and those are the things. Like sometimes I'm going to try getting 4 of these into people's hands, or 5 of these, and try doing this, and that's kind of where you're trying to get things with the trends.
On a weekly basis, we got what I want to say. I have 6 racks times 6 shelves, 4 feet wide, dedicated to new books, right, Steve and Jay and Omar, and so there's probably every week about 80 to 100 titles releasing, right? And I don't even order 80/20. I can't. There's no way I'm going to order all that stuff. But we have a large selection. So for us to gamble, my benefit is that I've been in business for, I think, 13, 14 years. So now I got to gauge on what sells, how many I need, and in our system, we know it's the walk-ins, the people, and probably Omar can attest to this, it's the guys. If you don't have, if you didn't hit on Absolute Batman, and Absolute Batman just re-energized the industry. I'm sorry, the comic collecting industry. It was fantastic. I think we sold maybe 1,000 copies. I haven't done the final numbers, but probably with a reorder and concert, it's like 1,000 copies. Absolute Wonder Woman last week, we sold out of I think I got 2 blanks that I pulled off for myself, and we did probably about 600 copies of Absolute Wonder Woman, which was fucking insane. And I got a reorder. So that's coming this week. So for Superman, I think my numbers are around 800, 850 copies. And that's pretty good for these days. And I know I'll sell out of that shit completely. And Batman, I wish I held back more. I did. I got some coming. So I bought some second stock, and you pay a little bit more of a premium just to bring it back because the demand is there. And we've been pre-selling those for $24.99, which is what, 3 times cover price, still cheaper than the market value, right? And people are still buying them, and because I have to pay more. So those are the books that have great stories, great appeal, and bringing these collectors back into the industry. And that's what we need in comics. Like for a good while, like remember back in the day, summertime was your Marvel and DC blockbuster.
That was event time.
Miniseries,
Annuals and events,
and it was fantastic. And back in the day, they used to give you those little checklist cards, and I'd go to my local comic shop and get X-Men Extinction Agenda back then, or the Follow the Mutants and all that. So it was fantastic. None of these, they don't do that anymore. They just put out these stupid fucking miniseries just for the sake of it, and it's the dumbest covers ever. Comic Retailing 101, comic publishers, put out a banger of a cover with a good story. Absolute Batman, Scott Snyder, 12 years, 14 years to the date of New 52, comes back from his New 52 Batman. Everybody loved that storyline. Comes back, does Absolute Batman, and boom, everybody's back in the store. I only compared, that's the biggest book probably in the last 5 years, outside of the return of Berserker, Keanu Reeves, and probably Ultimate Spider-Man coming back, which brought all those Ultimate Universe type of people. And if it wasn't for that, DC wouldn't have done Absolute Batman. And that's what we need in this industry, is more of those banger of a books, because it brings people, not just for the value, but people are reading the book and loving it,
Good stories make it. They really do.
So it's interesting that you guys are saying strong characters, strong stories. And with X-Men 97, basically reviving the X-Men.
Yeah.
To an extent. Should they revive Spider-Man 94 and do like a Spider-Man 98?
No, Spider-Man 94 wasn't that big. And thanks for bringing it up, because I forgot it. It was 30 years ago, and I didn't even remember about the stupid Spider-Man 94. Come on, man. Spider-Man has like 20,000 titles. And
no. I meant the animation, the cartoon.
Sorry, you guys are dating my side. I didn't even watch that, so sorry. X-Men 97. Sure. I watched X-Men 97. That was fantastic. Don't forget, I was married at that time. So
it's all good. I was in university, so I caught the first 2 seasons. And honestly, I'm a big Spider-Man fan, Omar. I'm loving the poster behind your head. But those first 2 seasons, and I want people in the chat to kind of tell me that I was an old man even back then. I was like, this cartoon is fast as hell. Like the way that they edited it and the way that the action was, it was like blazing fast. Love the animation. I love like the Venom and the Hydra Man episodes in season 1. But it was just one of those ones where I was like, ooh, it was a little quick for me. But being a Spider-Man fan, I enjoyed it. Any comments on how you guys think Spider-Man 94 should come back.
It definitely has a huge fan. At least for me in my shop, a lot of people have been speaking about that. It's like since '97 kind of came out. And I mean, you got to also remember, to the credit of the Batman the animated series, they had Mark Hamill being the Mark Hamill was the Hobgoblin in that too. Like there was also crazy characters, but like I loved that show growing up. Like from the figures to the comics to everything, that was a big one for me as a big Spider-Man fan. And it's tough because like anything, I think you could say like as long as they do it well, yes, because that's all we're hoping for. But it's one of those like they never touch it. It's still there. It's fine. Like it doesn't really need anybody to bring it back. But a good Spider-Man cartoon is actually due for the last little bit. I don't think they've had a good one in a while since like Spectacular Spider-Man.
Right.
The more comic exposure to mainstream media, why not? It benefits the store. In my shop, sorry, this is the first time we're talking about Spider-Man 94, right? So X-Men 97 sold fantastic, and then it's only a 4-part series. That was disappointing because there's a lot of people still that wanted more. I don't know. They should have gone more. I don't know.
So I guess that was just the tie-in to the animated series, right? To the revival
during the run. I don't know. It was a great seller, but 4 issues. I don't know. Spider-Man 97. You want to do it. If it's going to bring people back, why not? So,
well, Honor U83 says, "I just want to know where the heck Mary Jane was." Now that's a great point because Mary Jane showed up at the end of X-Men 97.
Did she?
Yeah, so she showed up with Peter. Daredevil makes an appearance. Like X-Men 97 basically confirmed that a lot of Marvel's animated universe shows were in the same universe. They shared the same universe.
They opened
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so now there's that mystery of where Mary Jane was when the series ended. We don't know, but they get back together.
Yeah, they were teasing it a lot because the newspapers, you could actually see them blowing in the wind. They said Spider-Man or hinting at the fact that web crawlers and things like that. And it was the Daily Bugle actually that was blowing around. It wasn't any other newspaper. But there are a lot of Spider-Man fans out there for the cartoon. I remember I think I was in college at the time or something like that, and I mean people were just like hooked on this show. You know what I mean? And I remember it specifically because it was definitely one of those flash animated shows where it was like hyper realistic. The colors were so oversaturated, and
Banger
it really
theme song as well too.
Absolutely, and it had the it just caught your attention as soon as you saw it on the screen. It was great during the Fox Kids at the time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and also too, like it spawned a pretty decent toy line or toy lines, and I think McFarlane's coming out. Is it McFarlane that has like a new set?
This week it came out based on his artwork, his license. It's little statuettes. They look fantastic. He did a great job with the sculpts and stuff. Too bad they're not action figures, but they're pretty nice, and the price point is perfect. So it's sold out everywhere. So it's sold out at the suppliers. So
yeah, he's again he's in really deep with DC in terms of their action figure line, and obviously Marvel Legends is still holding very strong with their properties. So the way his foot in the door right now to show that he can actually compete is the Statchins, right? The little bookenders, and they look amazing. You know what I mean? The Spawn one went up for pre-order just a little while ago, and it's like I think it's like $160 or something like that. It's crazy, but it's selling really well. So people really do love Spider-Man. As a matter of fact, if you want to bring up the image I have right now, Steve, I'll just show you really quickly. Mondo, which is known for their 1/6 scale figures, their convention exclusives, which really started this whole thing in terms of like trying to get people's attention. As soon as this was announced, I believe this was either their New York Comic Con from last year exclusive, or it was the San Diego Comic Con exclusive for this year. Yeah, this sold out like in droves, like $240 for a 1/6 scale figure, and it just sold out immediately, right? And same thing with their Venom, which of course is based off the animated series.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like it's people really love this series, and they had to reissue them in the what's it called, the regular release, and they're up for pre-order right now. 220 for that figure and 245 for the Venom. So
Wow.
there's definitely a flavor out there for this type of thing. And these are 1/6 scale figures. They're not 6-inch figures. They're like 12 inches. It's crazy. These things are huge. So and people are very very I'm not going to say hungry, but there is definitely a fandom out there that really appreciates this version of Spider-Man. 100%.
Well, when you think about it, though, and you go back to that time, it had been probably almost 10 years since they'd been, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they'd been almost 10 years since there'd been a cartoon, because I think the 80s with Amazing Friends might have been the last one, and then 94 would have kicked in. And so for a whole generation of kids, that cartoon on Fox, right? That was their Spider-Man. That was their animated or out of the comic book version of Spider-Man that they could digest. Like, I grew up with the 60s one, and then there was also the 80s version, the Spider-Man cartoon before Spider-Man is Amazing Friends, and then they had like the live action TV show for like a minute with Nicholas Hammond, who ironically is probably who they modeled the animated version off of, because they got the same mop of hair. And so like these cartoons fill in the gaps for when they don't have any kind of other product for people to then go to comic book shops and learn about Spidey, right? Or pick up the adventures.
But that's for our generation, right? And for the generation now, they're growing up on Enter the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
With Miles Morales, Silk, Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider. That's their generation of superheroes. You got to remember, our generation knows that the Spider-Man, Mary Jane, and Doc Ock, and so on. But the new, as soon as they do a live action with those characters from Enter the Spider-Verse, that's going to be probably the biggest Spider-Man movie, related type movie, with Miles Morales beating the Spider-Man movies hands down. And that's this young generation's version of, they relate more to Miles Morales, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Peter's always going to be, he's always going to like have a place, obviously. But as the generation grows, it's Miles. Like the Spider-Verse kind of solidified that. And Jay, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first Spider-Verse was in that 94 cartoon when he met like the Steel Spider and all of that stuff near the end of the run.
I mean, yeah, I think you're right. This generation also has video games, right? Like the Spider-Man PlayStation video game is absolutely like tearing it right now. And they've just been killer games for Sony, and of course the properties that they have licensed to right now, and that's actually, I think, what's really connecting with the kids, the games. And then when you translate that into the animated series, which is another universe in and of itself, the relationship he has with Spider-Gwen is really hitting a lot of these kids, and they're growing up and they're understanding what it is to have relationships now. So yeah, it's that type of generational hero that they have. And again, Peter Parker, no matter what iteration of him there is out there, he is just an archetype for a guy who was in a unique circumstance and chose the right path to actually execute on it. Right? It's like any real superhero story that we've heard, but again, because he's fallible, because he's somebody who can make mistakes and makes mistakes often, right? And because he has relationship problems, just like many of us in our lives, he's just so much more relatable than like Batman, who doesn't want relationships. He just kind of like, he's just like, here, we'll try this girl for now, we'll try that girl for now, like I'll use this person until it's inconvenient, and then but Peter Parker, he actually is trying to make it work. He's trying to, that I think that really was an endearing quality of Peter B. Parker in the movie, the fact that he was having marital problems and had to work it out, right? And then now we have Mayday Parker which is one of the most adorable things I've ever seen on film. So you know what I mean. And she has her own she has her own action figure, for crying out loud. SH Figure Arts just made Mayday Parker. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but
It's
it's the
mad
most
cute.
adorable thing. It's
a mad
ridiculous.
cute figure.
It is ridiculous.
I'm going to get to some comments here. Alfonso, how you doing? He says, well said, Carlos. So, Carlos, when you were going on about comic book shops, we have him chiming in. And then we've got Scott. How you doing, Scott? Not only support the local comic shops, but a huge shout out to the local comic shops who support local indie creators. I know Carlos and Omar personally are huge supporters. Thank you for everything that you do for us creators. And I will second, third, and fourth that. These guys have been great, not only for other indie creators, but also for the Comics Asylum crew, where Atrium's concerned. Without you guys are the lifeblood.
Selling book of the week, Atrium, number 1 through 3, available on Wayside Comic Racks and Gotham Central Racks. New release this week. I give them top shelf this week, brother.
Yeah, man, loved it. It was great to see, and also meet some of the fans who were in there picking up issues. It was fantastic. Forever in your debt, man. Love it.
Oh, that's what we need more. And I've been in the retail business, comic retail business, for 30 plus years, going back to 86, starting with sports cards, right? So when comic shops come to me for advice, and the first thing I say is like, build community. Get in touch with see who's around you, who's your local creators, see what you can do, build a community. Once you build a community, Omar's on the right path. He's doing great with that, build a community, and the Creator Con, which I like to know. Sorry, Omar, I couldn't come. I had real bad back issues, and my sciatic was acting up. But I heard it was a great success and fantastic. Anybody who has a brand new shop, don't sit on your ass. Be active. Get creators in there, talk to your local creators, and just build that community, family, friends, and then you'll have a strong business around it. You're going to suffer for a little bit with any new business, but you gotta be able to work through it, get the support.
Yeah. The event, Omar, on Sunday was great. It was an awesome atmosphere. A lot of great creators, and it was amazing because not only was it great meeting new fans, but it also was great for the creators to network. And we were sharing ideas while we were at our tables. We would go inside, see what was going on at the brewery. It was almost like we didn't know quite what to expect, but what we got out of it was invaluable.
I'm glad to hear that, man. Honestly, I do this, the reason we're doing what we're doing is to, how can I explain this in a way? The analogy at the show.
We're doing what we're doing to make money. You got to say that because we got to live,
True.
Besides the love of the industry. Don't forget, at the end of the day, we all got to still pay our bills and survive, right? That's why we do what we do. It's a little bit of freedom. You got to tell them, Omar.
You're not wrong, man. You're not wrong. That is without the economy of it all, we don't exist, and then you can't come to the shops and be a part of everything. This is 100% true. But for me, my personal experience with comics, and the reason I love the medium so much is because I grew up with it. And I don't mean I grew up with it in the sense that I grew up around comics. I grew up because of comics. When I was a kid, we moved here. I didn't know how to speak English. I didn't know how to read. I learned everything I know from comic books and television and that helped me on my journey to move forward. One of the personal things that I love to find is comics that have no words and are just kind of sequential imagery, because they help kids who don't want to read. Because even if they're not reading words, they're following stories or creating things in their mind. And I think that's a very important thing. And someone moves here from Iran or something like that, and they want to be a part of things, you can put that in their hands and they can still get something out of that. And I think that's a very important thing. So I always look for something like that. But with creators and stuff, I have a lot of respect for people who not only want to put their ideas into a tangible thing, but can finish that and then keep going, because that puts you miles ahead of everybody else with an idea. And the hustle is huge. I come from a film background, and everyone has a story idea and a script and this and that, but they don't want to show it because they don't want someone to steal the idea. No, you got to put yourself out there, and that's what it's all about. And it's, my job as a retailer as well, is to put your stuff out there so other people can buy it and find it. And I can say the one thing, Newmarket's not the best comics town in the sense that we sell a lot of comics and stuff like that, but people here are very good at supporting local and supporting small. So we sell a lot of stuff off our indie racks and things like that. And sometimes, you know, Marvel and DC sell themselves these days. Like, people know the characters, they know what's going on. And these are big corporations that also have things that are government mandated. You guys brought up Spider-Man. It's one of those things. He was the everyman character, and then like they never let him grow up. I think that's what made Ultimate Spider-Man so huge for people. I'm married. I have kids, and he's married and he has kids. Suddenly I'm like, oh shit, he's relatable again to me. He's not just like having the same problems as a 30-year-old. You're being like, damn, man, you got to grow up a little bit. You got to have a little more responsibility. And that's the thing. Like Carlos said it best. Every generation has those characters. Miles Morales is that for this new generation. And nothing takes away our stories or our characters. There's just new ways to tell stories. But it's the indie guys. Like right now, the publishing industry isn't what it was before. There's no gatekeeping. You can have an idea, get it printed, put it out there, kickstart your project. You can get stuff out there. But for someone like myself, my job is to get eyes on what you're doing. I use the Ninja Turtles analogy all the time. It's like that was kind of a joke, throwaway book for them. They were like, if they drew the turtle, it made them laugh. We're going to do a Daredevil parody. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And like, boom, billion-dollar industry. The right people, all it takes is a couple people to see it and to like spread the word. So if we can sell one book to the right person, it can make a huge difference to people. And that's why we also do like with our social media. Anyone who buys, I always ask them, can I take a picture of you like with the book? It's not to say like, oh, we're selling indie stuff, but it's also a boom to creators to know that their stuff is moving. Because it's a very silent suffering that you sometimes have when you put yourself out there. You're like, oh, did it move? Do people like it? What's going on? Is this happening? So we got to do our part too. And like, I love that about it. I love this community. Moving into this business a year ago, I didn't really know the independent comics community. And within that year, people have been so kind and so generous and so giving of their time. We really do have a wonderful community here. And the other thing is people don't realize how much talent there is in Canada. Everyone assumes most of the big names are American. So to really like push that forward and to show people, it's like, nah, one, it's homegrown, but two, there's a lot of other stories out there and a lot of amazing things happening around you. You just have to let people know, like the best marketing is word of mouth because someone's telling you it's good. And then you'll be like, oh man, my friend told me, I trust his judgment. I'm going to go see it. And it's the same thing with comics. If I tell you something's good, and I'm very fortunate that like people here trust my judgment. So if I can put a book in their hand that's something like different, it's an amazing experience when they come back and like, okay, give me more. I have one kid who was like a DC Comics reader when he started here. And that's all he read was DC. And I got him to pick up a couple books from the indie spinner, and he's bought almost every book off that spinner. And what he told me was like, it's like thinking different. It's like the comics read differently. And that's a really cool thing to see someone go on a journey like that. I love when people can like kind of open up a little bit and be a blank canvas. Like I said, Marvel and DC are going to have the characters. They have the name recognition. You don't have to know the characters to know who they are. I mean, they're just part of the zeitgeist now. But there's so much other interesting stuff going on. And there don't have to be like stories with a million, issues of continuity. You can get like really good stories. You can keep moving from there and you can follow creators. Like I love transactional business because it pays the bills, but like what Carlos said, I love building relationships because that keeps people there. As creators, if you build that relationship with people, they're not going to buy your book once. They're going to follow your projects. They're going to like add to the Kickstarter. They're going to keep seeing what you're putting out, and I think that's a very important thing. And that's what CreatorCon was all about. It's celebrating people who put themselves out there, who have books, who have ideas, and putting all these people in a room together, because you do that and like it's a melting pot of brilliance sometimes. And it's really cool to see connections form. And again, a lot of you guys I know each other from online, but when you put faces to names, it's a very different experience interacting. And like that's the thing. That's the bar part of my shop, because I mean we are a cocktail bar too. You can talk about the comics here like a lot. You can buy your books, you can sit down, you can have a conversation. Maybe your friends aren't geeky people. Maybe, they're not in that world. But you come here, everyone who comes through that door is on the same page. They're all geek out about something. So it's easy to start a conversation. And that's why we did it at a brewery. That's why we want to take that shop experience and keep that going. And I mean, we learned a lot of lessons. We made a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of logistical issues, like cars in places that shouldn't have been that day. But we really want to grow from this first CreatorCon and really take it to the next level this next year. And I have big ambitions for where we want to go and keep it the same. Like, I want to spotlight the comics. To me, at the end of the day, like I used to go to Comic Cons when they were like in a Holiday Inn meeting room and it was just a couple guys with long boxes and all that. I always messed with my dad when there was a time we grew up pretty poor. But there was a time we had an opportunity to buy X-Men 1 for $300. And my dad was hemming and hawing, and he decided at the end of the day, no, we don't have the money for it. And every now and again, I like to whip out like the price. I'm like, I'm just going to eBay this though. So Dad, what do you think X-Men 1's going for? It's like, oh man, we missed it. But those were the days too, when like you could just like bump into a Stan Lee, you can bump into creators. It was just left, right, and center. And the comics were it, man. And 2008 happened, and The Dark Knight and Iron Man and everything blew up. And then like the comics were there, but they kept kind of getting pushed to the side. And I think those shows don't exist without the heart of it. And comics are the heart of all those things. You don't go to those shows because of just like the movies or the video games. The heart of all those IPs starts with the comics, starts with people, with an idea, with a pencil, with a brush in front of a computer, a typewriter, whatever it is. That's where it all starts. And I think that's what we need to like refocus on and like give the attention where attention is due. We have to like really put that respect on those people's names, because they are doing some amazing, amazing things. Like I said, we're very, very fortunate to live in a country that has amazing groups of talent. We're also very fortunate to live in a time where anybody could put their stuff out there.
No, so true, so true. I'm just going to get to some of the comments because we've got some good ones here. Chad says, I was in the military during that time. I'm assuming during Spider-Man's Fox run. And he said he would watch the show in my barracks room. It's a great way to pass the time for sure. Let's see here. Dave Chinelli says, wonder if Jay can do J. Jonah Jameson. Is that possible, Jay?
Which one? There are actually a couple. There are a few of them now. There's not just one, but
for sure. Are you on RU83 says this was my Spider-Man, and that's the thing, right? There's going like for every generation, there's whether it's we didn't have the game technology back then, right? But it was cartoons for us if you weren't into the comics. And you might get a live action TV show if you're in the 70s. But every generation is going to have their Spider-Man. And at some point, like I'm going to bring up a topic in a little bit, but at some point, Miles Morales might be the one that you would see more of than you would see Peter Parker, right? Like you might get him shelved at some point. And I can totally see it because like the younger generation, like they love Miles. The issue is, will there be comics of Miles where you're going to get that amazing kind of storyline? That's not a rehash of a Parker storyline where he can chart his own path, right? It'll be the same with Connor Kent and Superman's kids as they're trying to age some of these characters out. And so we'll see. We'll definitely see. I'm just going to go back to Chad. Chad, he never cared for Miles. And I get it because it's not your Spider-Man, right?
It's more relatable to the culture of today, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And Omar, you brought up a great point with them not having Parker grow up in the 616 universe. You kind of like are shaking your head going like, what are you doing? Like you actually don't, whereas you could have connected to that character because he was trying to do the right thing and was your age and you could kind of relate to his foibles. When you grow up, you're like, bro, just make a decision and do something right. Yeah. Like why are you like Charlie Brown still trying to kick the football? like do something differently. And then the character kind of takes a dip. And I know that in New York, there was a bit of a kerfuffle at the a dust up at the Spider-Man panel because I can't remember who the editor is, but there during the Q&A, it got kind of heated between the fans, and the fans want their Peter Parker to kind of represent like in a proper way, but Marvel's, for better for worse, holding them back. Like One More Day is still an issue. And, it's interesting because I'm going to get to a couple of comments, but like the Spidey stories, I'm going to echo what one of the commenters has later. Spidey stories haven't been necessarily the greatest since the 90s.
No.
Right?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. And so if like 97, they were mining really great stories that you wouldn't have seen either on screen, either live action or whatever in the games, they had a lot to mine from. I'm not sure where they're going to go with Spidey. But, Travis Mitchell says here, last we saw both MJ and Venom in that show, they were both sucked into portals. I think doing it as a Spider-Man / Venom 98 would be a smart way to go. And, Spidey's got great villains, and you got to see a lot of them in that TV show. You got to see Carnage for the first time, and then the OG Rogues Gallery with Hobgoblin and Green Goblin and Doc Ock. So that is one way that they could take it for sure.
Well, there's two problems with the modern superhero in general. The biggest one is the fact that it's a never-ending series. Did you guys ever read Spider-Man Life Story by Chip Zdarsky?
No,
Mark
never
Baggy?
did get a chance to do it.
I highly recommend that book. That book is amazing. And why is it shows you why it's important, not just to age a character, but also why endings are important for the character. Because you can end a run and it kind of gives you the catharsis for that run, but then he just picks up again from where he goes and another shitty thing happens and another shitty thing happens. Endings matter because you can see character growth throughout a journey, and you can kind of get a whole experience with a person, and you have that moment where you're like, we've been through the journey. That's why Lord of the Rings is timeless and Star Wars is the same thing. You look at something like Invincible in the modern era, it's a story with an act structure and things happen. And when you get to the end of Mark Grayson's journey, you're like, wow, man, that was a hell of a ride. He goes through everything from being a kid to an adult to parenting through sexual assault, everything. And it's a crazy ride. And I think that's the hardest part about writing characters. It's we all oh, did you read this run? Did you read this run? And that's how we kind of have to think about it. But at the same time, if you don't end that character's run, you kind of put everything that they're doing on the back burner. It's not as important because there's going to be something else that happens. And sorry?
No, I think that might have been a background noise.
That was me. Sorry, I was gonna chime in, but Omar, finish your point.
Oh no, by all means.
No, I totally agree. One of the things that I've always had a problem with, not I guess it's not really a problem, but I used to joke when I was in college that Marvel is always scared to move on. I think that's really been the biggest thing. And if you guys remember, a good friend of the channel's Adrian Alfona, he was part of that Marvel movement early on in the 90s. And sorry, in the early 2000s, my apologies, where Marvel was experimenting with the Mangaverse at one point. And that's where Runaways came from, right? Because it was supposed to be a manga type of idea, right? And they were introducing new characters and new universes. But what they were trying to catch there, the tail they were trying to catch was the ever-growing and more popularity of manga at the time, manga and anime. And arguably, almost every manga character has an arc. They pretty much have a beginning, a middle, and end, right? You on unusual. Dragon Ball Z's gonna just that thing's gonna keep going forever. I don't know what the hell's happening there. That should have Akira Toriyama, rest his soul. He should not have brought it back, is what I'm saying. But now it literally is the Marvel of anime. It just continues to keep going, and Goku never ages. Neither does Vegeta. Bulma's aging like crazy. Everybody else, but they keep showing them as youthful appearances, right? It's just very, very strange. Whereas every other manga character that's ever been created, they actually have kids. They grow up. They do, if you watch Bleach, he got together with Inoue and they're about to have kids. They keep alluding to it, but they never actually do. But all these other characters all do have some sort of story arc where it ends, or they die, or they move on, right? And I think that there's something towards that. Marvel and DC are trying to get there, as you mentioned earlier. We have Clark Kent's son, right? We have Peter Parker's child. We have there is a future, right? And then we have other characters like Miles Morales. We got Silk. We have so many different characters who are
Kamala Khan.
Yeah, finally being introduced, right? And being introduced, but it's going to take time, because the biggest problem that seems to be comics have not caught up with technology yet. I mean, we have digital comics, we have a whole bunch of different ways to consume media, but the real problem is that as long as the younger generation is hooked into their phones, and really we got to figure out a way to tap into that resource where they're reading new stories or new ideas and really getting attached to these new characters, because I think what's really caught their attention is still the MCU, the DCU. That's really what they know. And the problem with that is they're still our characters, right? They're still what we grew up with, just in a different format, right? They really should be pushing Miles. They really should be pushing, Kamala. They should be pushing everybody, right? Ms. Marvel, you know what I mean? All these other great characters, right? Again, Adrian Alfona, right? You know what I mean? Like, he's connected to a whole bunch of new initiatives that just continue to defy the odds. I don't want to point him out as something like a phenom or anything like that, but it really is strange that a Canadian is the one actually making the push into the market, whereas all of the characters have seemed to have some sort of hiccup or misstart or something like that. But I think that really they have to start moving forward with new stories and new characters. Carlos said it right. They have to. These are their Spider-Man. These are their Superman. These are their heroes, right? And they got to start moving in that direction.
Yeah, but you see, we're talking Marvel, we're talking DC, but now we're in a time where we're stuck with those characters we know, but we're so privileged to see all these other companies, let's outside the big two, pushing their universes, and maybe that's what kids will relate to better with those characters. Let's take example Ghost Machine pushing Hyde Street and Rook and Geiger and Redcoat. And so, as it's my job as a retailer to introduce, hey, Mr. Mike, I know you like only Marvel, but how about you pick up this comic over here, Rook? And then, oh man, this is like 10 times better than reading Spider-Man right now, because the stories are fresh, they're brand new. So we want to say that we want this generation to relate to Spider-Man, or push it in that direction, but maybe this generation of readers and collectors like the alternative, the different universes of Image. Let's say Saga, what a great read. Saga, Monstrous, all those indie reads that are fantastic in their own world, and maybe they can relate with stuff being created in those universes, rather than the same old bland shit that Marvel always puts out with Spider-Man, or DC does with fucking Batman. How many Batman titles do we need on a weekly basis? Because if it wasn't for Batman, DC would have probably gone belly up a long time ago, right? And it's like we were talking yesterday, Steve. The two anchor characters for Marvel and DC is Batman and Spider-Man. Then you got all these, the A plus, and you got your A minuses and your Bs and your things. So I want these other companies to succeed. I'd love to see Geiger on the big screen. That it's such an interesting, or Rook.
Rook would be great. Yeah,
Rook would be fantastic, and then it's just, you get tired of the big two, and that's where majority of our shops make our bread and butter. But we want the new stuff to come out, and that's what we want, and that's maybe what the new generation wants. They don't want to see fucking Peter Parker not growing up and dealing with his responsibilities. You know what I'm saying? They want a new guy, and that's why, I don't know. That's
they don't want us yelling at Parker, going get a job. Right?
Yeah. So I don't know who brought it up, where there's Marvel holds a panel and fans are yelling at Marvel, but I just find that fucking ridiculous, man. I've been to those panels. I've been to those retailer meetings where DC gets up there and retailers are, instead of talking about bread and butter, how can we fix the business, they're crying over a fucking, why did you do this to Superman? You know what I'm saying? It's like, fucking wake up. Are you kidding me? They're going to do that. If they did that now, 5 years from now, they'll do it again and rehash it as a different story. And that's how the world works, right? So, yeah, for me, I want to push everything else outside of those characters that we know. And why not push the other comics and push out the other characters, man? That's fantastic. Bring up, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, Carlos, I think you got a point, because one of the most popular shows right now on Amazon is The Boys, right? A wonderful comic, right? And Omar brought it up earlier. Invincible, right? Like, oh my gosh, like, how old is Invincible? Invincible's like really old. It's you know, it was in the 90s, right?
20 years,
It's
25
true.
years, maybe.
Mark did like if you actually read it from book from cover to cover, you
Yeah,
know,
Kirkman knocked that out of the park. But here's the thing, though, right? Are those like the Boys and Invincible? Are they, because they're so new, are they able to be adapted? I know Kirkman's adapting it, so it's going to be a pretty faithful adaptation for Invincible. But are they able to change things that so they work for the big screen or the small screen, and not have their fandom so twisted in knots that if you change something 10%, that they lose their mind, right? Because there are changes in the Boys that if they stuck with the book, it would be kind of weird, right? It wouldn't as be as effective. It works better for the screen.
You know, you're in film. You know that everything gets changed to that.
Absolutely, because everyone has to have their piece of the pie.
What we read in comics, and then they put on film. You know, let's take example, Wolverine, Deadpool. That was a fanboy's dream. I think that was
Absolutely
made fantastic. Hit every comedic action, the one-liners. It was a big fu to Disney and Marvel, and say fuck with this bullshit. Let's go great comic book. Let's do it the right way. Rated R, boom. That's how we want. If the Boys were, you know, they're pretty much 80% true to the comic.
Oh, definitely.
Come on, you know.
But that's what I mean, Carlos, right?
Yeah.
Like for some fans, if you're not 95% to the source material, they lose their mind.
Hey, but those fans already know about the book. What you want is the new fans to, you know, how many people come into my shop and say, man, I just watched this show, Invincible. Do you have any books?
Or the omnibus or whatever.
And I have to say, I don't have any comic books because they're all expensive, but here's the omnibuses, here's the collected editions and stuff like that. So that's what we want. We want it's like you want to help them recognize and discover everything outside of DC and Marvel, you know. But those are lasting, those are forever, you know, creations. But we want to, it's time for new, you know. Ford, General Motors, they all been around, and here comes Tesla. You know what I'm saying? That's what we want. We want new, you know, new gum, new juicy fruit. We want some juicy comics, juicy characters, juicy thing. And instead of these rehashing, Absolute Batman, that's got to be one great story to read. Finally, a darker version of Batman, and it's totally different than what we expect from Batman, right? So that's fantastic. So bring us some more, bring us newer characters. I don't know.
Well, Batfan #1 has an interesting point, and this was a point that I was referring to before. It says, keep in mind, X-Men 97 can succeed because the stories they bore from are really good. They basically cherry-picked the best arcs and storylines from the X-Men. Spider-Man in the 90s was really bad. And that kind of void of really good storytelling is what opened the door for the Invincibles. And a lot of the independent scenes where, like, you know, I'm not getting, you know, my property done at Marvel. I'm going to come up with my own thing. And then you've got Image or whomever is out there where you can get your book out and get the ideas out that are fresh.
Let me put it this way. If I was to ask you what saved the comic industry in the last 24, 25 years, what comes to mind?
It's a good question. I would probably say the MCU.
No, you're wrong. I would say Walking Dead.
Of course, yes.
Walking Dead saved the comic book industry. This guy that was overweight, 6'2", sitting at Baltimore Comic-Con. I walk in, I'm looking at his table. He goes, "Hey, buddy, come check out my new book." And I pick it up, Walking Dead 1, 2, 3, 4, first print, see on his table. I look at it, I go, it's a zombie book and it's black and white. What is this? Oh, they're walkers. They're not zombies. And I say, you know what? I bought those. I bought like 5 copies of each back then, $3 each. Okay. Years later, Walking Dead gets picked up.
AMC.
Okay? I can't remember. I go to the con, and I've met Kirkman a few times since between, and this guy goes, "Hey, You're the guy that said my book was wouldn't go nowhere. But just to get to my point, see, it wasn't Marvel or DC. They had the opportunities with their movies, and they did shit for the industry. It was actually Walking Dead, and then you can pinpoint a little bit to the television side, Big Bang Theory, focusing that cast on. So when I opened in 2012, 2011, that was the main driver of sales. Was, hey, do you have any Walking Dead? Big Bang Theory, right? And then when the MCU came in and started doing their movies and stuff, that's Avengers, with the Iron Man movie and stuff like that. So if you look at the last 24 years, you got to really thank an independent company, an independent mind that saved the comic industry. And if you disagree with me, this is how it is. Todd McFarlane, the owners of Image would not have, Jim Lee at the time, would not have made Robert Kirkman a partner because they knew the creative mind they had and the stuff he's going to put out with Invincible, and they had all the other books he's written, right?
So then, and I wanted everyone to chime in on this one, has Image saved comics twice?
What was the second time?
Well, the 90s would have been the first time.
I think I don't think it was more saving in the 90s. I think it was shaking up the industry. I think they really brought comics to the more to an adult audience. I think they didn't care about the comics code. Not that DC or Marvel was following it at the time anyway, but I think that they really showed that, you know what, let's everybody who grew up with these comics is freaking 30 years old now. Like 20, they want to see bigger, more mature stories. When you're talking.
I owned a shop in the 90s. Sorry to interrupt, Jay. Marvel and DC was shit in the fucking 90s. It was pure garbage. They were just putting out shit. You had the death of Superman, that rattled up stuff, and then all of a sudden they just came out with 20 million copies and issues of shit. Blue Superman. It was just garbage.
Clone Saga too, right?
Pardon?
The Clone Saga for Spider-Man as well too?
Clone Saga, I don't know, man.
That was terrible, man.
It was terrible. It was a big night. Then Image comes along, and it wasn't nothing that the stories were great, because the stories were fucking shit. But the artwork was stuff we never saw. The paper quality was fantastic. The covers blew your mind. And then you start seeing foils and variants, and it's just about the artwork, right? And that's what changed the industry. You had these guys that worked for the big two, which was Marvel, DC, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, and Eric Larson, so on, and they left to start their own. And I remember doing a convention in Toronto, and I think it was pre-Fan Expo Canada, and they had the Image guys come. I think it was 1994, and I just here I am as a young vendor, young comic store owner, seeing Todd McFarlane, all these legends right there, like rock stars. And that brought the rock star mentality to comics. I had never seen anything like that. It was just fantastic. And it just grew from there. And that's where, so I guess, they kind of saved the industry and they kind of killed the industry towards the late
90s. It was almost like a big bang and then a contraction. And then whatever we have now has grown out of that second wave with Kirkman and his Walking Dead and anyone that's followed, because Saga comes out of that as well too.
Well, it made comic creators rock stars, man. I mean, Spike Lee was directing Levi's commercials with Rob Liefeld in them. And that's insane.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
How much Rob Liefeld was a millionaire because of that. You know that?
Oh, he was fucking selling his left, right, and center.
Making money hand over fist like crazy. Do you guys remember a guy named Pat Lee?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Pat Lee, of course. Oh my God.
Dreamwave Studios, man. They were doing the Transformers.
They were rocking and rolling. Crazy.
I knew him back in the 90s. And when he got that Transformers license and Dreamwave, I guess he was making a lot of money because he wasn't paying his artists and creators. But I remember
one way to make money, yeah.
So he showed up at Fan Expo with this fucking brand new Porsche.
I do remember that.
Porsche. And I'm looking at this motherfucker, man.
Yeah, 'cause I think not to be spreading rumors, Carlos, but I think they actually bought a building as well too up in Markham or something.
Yeah, I believe they did. I believe they did.
Yeah, like they were balling, man.
They were balling, man. That's some big time money. And then they made it. And then, like you said, sorry, those image guys were making money like crazy. Crazy.
They're making money. So they were making so much money. I remember there was a bar on Richmond. I can't remember the name of it, but Todd McFarlane showed up with the home run balls from Sosa and McGuire that he had purchased.
Yeah. So how smart was Todd McFarlane to be a business owner, a comic book creator at that time when he bought those balls for $2 million? I'm figuring that's what, and people are saying, who the fuck is this guy from Calgary, Alberta, Canadian, but didn't realize he's so smart that he was coming up with McFarlane toys. And he took those balls, which were the biggest news at that time, and he traveled stadium to stadium to stadium to stadium to conventions, and people came out, and as they're looking at a set of balls, and there's McFarlane action figures, and that's how he built his brand. And I don't know what I should have asked him what he did with his balls.
He's
they're in the
he's
Hall of
fondling
Fame.
them very. He's fondling them. That's when he's fondling them.
And
he's always thinking about how much they're actually worth. But
Yeah.
I think that you know what, it's funny how a kid from freaking Calgary, Rose, and he owned the freaking Edmonton Oilers for a little while. You know what, or a owner, and that's freaking crazy, man. Like,
he designed the logo too, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
The big oil drip.
We haven't. Omar, what did you think did Image, help to save the industry, or at least, brought it back a couple of times? Do you agree with that statement, or?
Well, I mean, I remember being a kid when like all that happened, and just like the collector's market was huge, and everyone wanted to check out the books. And yes, it was very much like all about the art. And at the time, I wanted to be an artist, so I was like, in there and like tracing over comics and stuff, trying to get every issue I could find of everything. I mean, hell, I still like vividly remember the first time I saw Stephen Platt's like work on like Prophet.
Stephen Platt, that's right.
Yeah, dude, like that stuff was unbelievable to me. And like,
as
much as you want to give life
Yeah.
shit or whatever, like the dude appeals to like a demographic of people very highly, and I think it's because he draws the way like you could imagine yourself drawing as a kid.
Yes.
And, like, he brings characters like that to life, and I think that really connects with people. But I agree with, like, it definitely reinvigorated things around that time. It really made the other people like scramble and have to think outside the box. I mean, what was happening after that? Like DC and Marvel were crossing over. They were doing the big DC Marvel crossover, and they were trying things with Amalgam. They were throwing everything at the wall to
their
see
company. That's what was happening.
Yeah.
It was going downhill. They weren't properly run. Sorry, go ahead. Stan Lee went bankrupt. He was on the verge of losing everything. Marvel was on the verge of losing everything, and then the print runs are not like today. Print runs were so Absolute Batman did 250,000 copies in print run that was the total sales of all their covers. You talk about probably 30 different covers from New York Comic Con to store regulars to variants exclusive. Back then, the average comic was 250,000 copies.
Carlos,
and plus.
Carlos, those numbers would get you canceled.
Right?
Like because we were on the cusp of that, and when we were in the studios, and when we were looking at some of the sales numbers, X-Men and stuff, like when Jim Lee and Claremont did that X-Men #1, it was like almost 1 million, right? Spawn was up in those numbers, 500,000 copies a month. Those were the numbers when Omar was buying books. Those were the numbers that were going around. If you're at like 100,000, 125,000, you're on the low end. Now you're a rock star book, right? You've been facing cancellation with the absolute Batman numbers that we have now. That just shows you how things have changed.
Well, but again, price points were $1.25, $1.50, $1.75 back then. So even though we made less per hour, or our minimum wage, what was it in the 90s, whatever it was, your dollar was stretched a lot more. Now the average comic is $4.99 US to $5.99 US to $8 Canadian. You buy 2 books, it's $15, right? So what was it? Spawn sold 1 million+ copies of #1, and by the time it reached the 150s, it was down under 8,000 copies a month. So you can see the whole decline of that in those times. So, and then to have Spawn still around at issue 360, I believe it is now, or 361. That's crazy, and the numbers have picked up again for Spawn. So, and the numbers back then were crazy. I bet you there's a warehouse somewhere in New York full of cases of Spawn #1, X-Men #1, New Mutants '98, something like that. You know, there's always those fun. Death of Superman. That was the other one, right?
The black bag. I just remember the black bag back in the day.
Yeah. Hey, it paid my mortgage. It helped me start my business.
Yeah, definitely.
This coverage back in the day, they also made it seem so grandiose. It's like Superman is dying. Nobody had seen stuff on the news, right? Like even when Grant Morrison killed Batman for Batman R.I.P., that made the news. When Captain America died for Civil War, that made the news. And all those moments really like brought up sales. Like that's like anything that crosses over into the mainstream that gets other eyes on everything. That's important too. Like it's not just the hobby isn't like just for us sometimes. It's like, you know, it should be shared by everybody. And it's those things that sometimes will bring a bunch of new readers and a lot of them will leave, but some of them will stay. You know, like that's what you really want.
It's anytime you see news on the news, it's good for business. That's all it is, right?
Yep.
Always want it.
Yeah. Batman #1 says the Balls gave him the shot to get the license to make the sport figures.
Yeah.
So here's a question, because it kind of ties into what you guys deal with on an everyday basis. Jay, I think you probably see this with the toy lines as well too. Carlos, you mentioned it. We've talked about it a little bit outside of this. I'm going to argue there are only 2 A-list characters in comic books. Anyone can come at me, but I will argue there's only 2. One's with DC, one's with Marvel.
So you're saying Darkhawk is an A-list character?
I would say Darkhawk and Squirrel Girl. No, it's not.
No, that's the same company, man. You gotta go separate.
Plastic Man. So Plastic Man and Darkhawk.
He just had his own comic book that came out a few weeks ago. So
yeah, but if it's not Batman or Spider-Man, whether you go toy lines, cartoons, comics, whatever kind of merchandise, but especially comic books. You said there's how many Batman titles or Batman related titles?
From 10, 12, 14.
Right? The 2 books that revitalized comic book numbers: Ultimate Spider-Man, Absolute Batman. The one that, like, we're talking about Spider-Man '98, the Batman the Animated Series ruled the '90s.
It did.
Right? The toy lines that everyone kind of gets hyped up for are new Batman figures. And Jay, you can throw up those the Spider-Man figures that you've got there as well too. Do you want me to throw those up?
Yeah, we're just going right back to '94, right? I mean, like,
right,
you know,
going back
guys,
to the '94. Like if you look at it, and so like you look at the economics of comics and how the numbers have changed. Those are the only 2 that really are your moneymakers. It's kind of like why you get, like, I don't know, certain actors like Timothée Chalamet isn't like every damn movie right now. And it's because the studio or the studios think he's going to be a draw until he's not, right? And Superman, he's the granddaddy. He'll always be there. Wonder Woman's iconic. But like up until Big Bang, there weren't a lot of people wearing Flash stuff or Green Lantern stuff.
But the Big Bang helped Flash, and then the TV show was pretty decent on CW that it did real. You know, Titans did well. So besides you saying that the main pillars of comic is Spider-Man and Batman, and then you have a whole bunch of A- and B+ characters. Superman's iconic, but doesn't sell anymore like Batman, right? So you have your Wonder Womans and your Superman. And then you go to the other side and you got your Wolverines, and I can't even think of another single character.
Maybe iconically as Hulk. Like, would Hulk be in the Superman kind of thing where he's iconic, but he doesn't drive sales.
Doesn't drive sale. I'd put Deadpool up there right now.
Anything X related, I would argue, and I think we had this conversation as well too. Anything X related would, if you put X-Men together as a collective outside of Wolverine and Deadpool, they would be near the A list. They would be A minus B.
Yeah, the From the Ashes storyline relaunch of X-Men titles, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. They're performing very well, selling well. X Factor has dropped off the charts. I don't know, and X Force is okay, but yeah, it's kind of tough. I don't know. Spider-Man and Batman are your top two of each company for sure, unless they do some major focus on a character, do a 4-part mini like Wolverine: The Revenge. You know,
Right.
really like the Red Band editions of that Marvel puts out with a little bit more gore, a little bloody, more adult oriented, the artwork and stuff like that. I really like that aspect. So
I think Batman one.
Sorry, Jay. Go ahead.
No, you finish your point, then I'll
No, I think they were also doing that for like Werewolf by Night. I'm not sure.
It's only Red Band. Yeah, Werewolf by Night's only Red Band.
Right.
I think Batman 1 has a very interesting comment, actually.
I totally agree with you on that one. Yeah. Let me see. I double clicked it. What do SMs, which is Spider-Man and Batman, have in common? They have the best rogues gallery for each company, for sure.
Yeah. As good as your villains.
Absolutely.
I'd argue that with the Marvel side with X-Men, because X-Men has some pretty good.
Yeah.
Man, come on, you got Mr.
Yeah, well, them and FF. I think X-Men and FF have some pretty good villains.
I think Marvel has way better villains than DC. DC tries to ride the coattails of Joker and Joker, you know.
although Penguin he's getting some love with the Colin Farrell.
What's
his name?
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, people are not liking that last Joker movie. They're abandoning it like
you know
like
you
a
know who
sinking
loves
ship.
it though, Jay?
Crazy.
Who loves it? Tarantino loves it.
Yeah, but look at Tarantino. He's a little fruit too, so it's all right.
Tarantino likes some weird things, though, man.
Yeah. He was looking at it from a director's point of view, and I think Todd Phillips is the director. And he basically said the movie is an FU to the industry. So I haven't seen it, so I can't back that up or agree or disagree. But I guess when you're a filmmaker, you look at things a little bit differently when it comes to those kind of projects.
He got paid for doing the movie. That's all. Yeah. It's a stain on his record.
Mother Slug. I still have 4 unopened black bags of Death of Superman. Omar, what can Mother Slug get with those 4 unopened bags? What are those worth now?
If you go to Wayside Comics, you get 2 beers and a bowl of nuts for those, for sure.
All right. All right.
Chad Stewart says, I always liked Green Arrow because he didn't have any superpowers. That's actually my favorite DC guy outside of Superman. Like, I love Superman a lot. I always like Nightwing. I love Dick Grayson. It's a great character.
Well, there was a moment in the 90s too where they tried to pass the torch on to all those characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like my Flash is Wally West. You know, I grew up in the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern time.
Right.
All that stuff.
And like Kyle Rayner's like 30 years old now, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Nobody ages in comics, man. What the hell? They all look perpetually freaking 25 years old. It's just ridiculous.
I guess so. Bat fan number 1, Ultimates became the template for the MCU Avengers, which is getting back to what we're talking about. If you have great stories, then you can adapt them into anything that you want. But the basis is the story. Like, the art's great, but if you don't have like that connective tissue to make the art mean something, then you're going to lose it.
But it also brings up another very interesting point, which is the best stories from most characters are all out of continuity.
That's true.
Right. Like the most iconic stories, all the big stuff, they're usually out of continuity because the characters have this, you know, they shine on their own and you can tell their stories. But when you're not backlogged by all this editorial bullshit or Disney or whoever owns the companies, when it's no longer just a financial thing, when you let people tell good stories, I mean, that's when the best stuff comes out.
No, I agree. Because, and I'm sure, Carlos, you would have heard maybe some of the backlash or some of the scuttlebutt when you're at the cons. Editorial goes a long way to denying great stories from being told.
And that's why a lot of creators are doing their own thing. And it's a time for creator freedom, where you needed that paycheck. You're working for Marvel, DC. Now you don't need to work for any of those guys. You can go put out a great story and publish it your own, and don't have to answer to nobody, and that's what it is. And that's the problem. Sometimes these editors, especially with Marvel being with Disney and Warner Brothers, I guess is DC. There's a fine line. DC tried it with the Black Label series,
right,
and let that go. And remember, we were talking that they're bringing back Vertigo now and stuff like that. What's Marvel? I can't even remember what Marvel's.
They had Edge. They had Marvel Edge for a bit.
Marvel Edge and Marvel Knights, I believe.
And Marvel Knights, yeah. That was
Edge.
with Punisher and Daredevil and all these street characters.
Yeah, that was headed up by Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti back in the day. So yeah,
right.
Edge didn't do nothing. What did Edge do? That was garbage, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that though there is a lot of value in looking into our past. You know what I mean? Like, I think one of the biggest factors right now for sales, at least it appears in the toy market, is nostalgia. Nostalgia seems to be driving a lot of sales. Transformers is back to talk about the Matrix. You know what I mean? Like G.I. Joe is freaking skyrocketing. Like, people are just like eating that up like crazy. Master Universe is somewhat, still relevant, even to my dismay, because I love Master Universe and I wish that they'd push it more. But sales are sales. And of course, Star Wars, even though it's such a bad property right now, it's just absolutely horrid. People are still buying toys and still somewhat buying comics on that level. Again, diehard, freaking ride or die Star Wars fans, right? But it's just one of those things where it seems like they're always falling back on nostalgia, and properties like 94, Spider-Man, it's right up your alley. You know what I mean? It's around that time. The anniversaries are coming up, you know what I mean? And I can foresee a lot of other properties coming back up. Very popular cartoons at the time are probably going to get their time in the circle at this point. So it's a cyclical nature of us human beings, right? When we start getting older, we just want to collect the stuff that we had in our youth, and I think that really there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, like as a Spider-Man fan, if they did, and it's weird because I never watched the entire run of that cartoon, but I never watched all of the X-Men either. I think I watched the first season, but I was glued to 97. Like, they just did it well, animated well, the stories were great. If they can do a Spider-Man that is connected to that universe, and they do it well with the same kind of level of animation, they bring back the voice actors, you've got my money. Like,
they also
I'll sit and watch it.
97 to like a general audience. They didn't write it to kids.
Yes,
which is what audiences don't want to be dumbed down. And our kids these days, let's face it, they're seeing everything in the world nowadays with the way everything is connected. So don't dumb it down. When you dumb it down, you completely alienate a whole.
Oh, and the anime and the manga that they're watching and reading, that stuff, it's like for us. It's for old people, teens, whatever. It's not for little kids.
No,
and they love it. They absolutely love that stuff.
Anime is what, and I dare say this. Anime is a playbook that Marvel should continue to look into. DC should continue. Their crossovers, those anime DC crossovers, like Samurai Batman and all these other properties that they've tried. They should continue to try. They should continue to let. They just did. I think recently they just did a Suicide Squad anime, right?
Yeah.
And again, they should give the Japanese another chance, like chances to keep pushing that. Like, it's never going to hit the mainstream, like us or the true Marvel DC fans. But what you're doing is you're introducing these characters to anime kids, and when you do that, that's a brand new market that you can open yourself up to, right?
Well, let's face it, there's more of them now than there are of like regular people.
So here's a question. Omar and Carlos. With the way that DC is going to those digest sizes, right, for some of their books, that's kind of the same size as some of the manga that the kids are reading. Would Marvel or DC benefit from doing original stories in that size? That's so it's the same size. The editions are thicker. Doesn't necessarily have to be color, but at least the storytelling and like the format is in the way that the kids want to see. Would that change anything for the industry, do you think? Or are we just stuck on like we've done it this way forever? This is always how we've always made sausage this way, and this is the way we're going to make sausage till the end of time.
Let's put it the new format is people are loving it. Smaller, easier to store. Price point is perfect, but all they're doing is reprinting
right
6 issues or whatever the storyline is. For them to do that format with that much pages, you're not going to get a $9.99 book anymore. You're going to get it's going to be like $25 plus, because it's all original art, original covers, new writers. People got to get paid. Where those are the formats they're doing. It's paid for, and just printing money again and again and again, and reaching out. People are loving those new digests. If they do it, they got to do it like once every 2 months type of thing, and like manga. How manga comes out every 2, 3, 4 months, you get a volume, right? They could probably get away with doing something like that, and it might appeal to outside of North America, to that market in Asia. That's where Marvel and DC really want to break into, is that Asian market, because that's where there's millions and millions of followers for that stuff, and the money's there, right? North America here, the generation that you hope to take into the comics are too busy playing video games or on their phone or on YouTube or TikTok, and they don't give two shits, and you just hope to bring in a little, catch them. I love it when I see new young comic new collectors coming into the shop and say, hey, I heard about this book. Oh, wow, who told you? My friend reads comics. I want to try comics. And then that happened today. And he ended up buying 5 different titles we recommended, and he bought it. And that's what we want, it's like, get off your phone, come read comics type of thing, or come into the collectible shops, My daughter, Steve, she's in the shop working all day. Out of 8 hours of the day, she probably works 3, because 5 hours was on a fucking phone, scrolling, looking at IG, and every time, and you know how I am in the shop, I'm yelling, get off your phone, I'm supposed to be working, right? Meanwhile, she spends another hour complaining that my other employees are on the phone. Meanwhile,
it's a generational thing.
It is.
Right?
It's the new drug.
Right. And Omar, what are your thoughts on if Marvel or DC or any of the other, like Image or Distillery, whomever, came out with manga-sized, I don't know, quarterlies or something like that?
Well, Image does have their books. I know they're printing Invincible smaller right now, and as they're doing their new print run. But anything that gets people reading, I mean, if you look at Watchmen, it's $13.50 Canadian for like the little version, or $33.99 for the big one. If you just want to read it, it's great. It gets people reading comics, and that's an important thing. The economy is hard right now too. So whatever can put comics in people's hands, I'm all for that. Like Carlos was saying, if they're done properties that they already have, yes, 100%. Put them in a new format that's going to make them more accessible for people. I know the paper stock is different. I know the art's not big, but it gets other people reading it. And that's the most important part, is putting stories in other people's hands, because that's your gateway drug right there. So like I grew up in South America. So I grew up in Mexico, and like comics were hard down there because there are a lot of really good comic shops. They have a great convention down there, but they're hard to find. Like English comics, you're like about 6 months to a year behind down there with whatever you want to get. But like you grow up on anime, you grow up on manga more than anything else. So there is a reason, I think, why that format like speaks volumes to a lot of people. Yes, it's more portable, one, because it's easier to store. You can put it in a pocket almost. It's the difference between like a book. You get the mass market paperbacks for really cheap, and you get the bigger ones. And some people just like to put them in their pocket and go, and some people like to have the bigger books. It's entirely personal preference. But I think there is something in that the manga market outsells North American comics 10-1. The stories are good, the art's good. Maybe you don't need color. Maybe you have to like adapt and do certain things. Like there is like Batman Justice Buster, there is Star Wars, there's a lot of properties that are jumping into the manga circuit to see where they're going. But again, it's also just the type of storytelling you want to. I think good stories will find their audience. I think they always will. Even unfortunately, when they get canceled and they become a success later on, movies do the same thing. You know, it wasn't popular on when it came out, or it took 10 years for it to find its audience, which always sucks. It's like John Carpenter, amazing director, did some of the greatest horror movies ever, but like in his time, he was not well received, didn't make any money. He had a hard go of it, but like now everyone's like, oh my God, it's John Carpenter. It's the same thing with anything. Like the important thing, the key thing is doing anything you can to make it accessible and easy for people to get it into their hands. And I think that's the key thing. The format, it's the price point more than anything, I think, that really is the important part here. Because if you're looking at kids, if you want to get kids into reading comics, if you want to get them off their phones, one of those digests is the cost of 2 comics off the shelf. And, you know, not everybody has like a pocket full of cash or has mom and dad money all the time. So they want to come in and they want to pick up they can pick up 2 graphic novels for like under $30 and have 2 full stories there. I mean, you can get Watchmen, you get All-Star Superman, you get Court of Owls. There's a lot of cool stuff that they're printing. And like Kingdom Come, I have so many people who are excited for Kingdom Come. Like personally, I like my books bigger because I like the artwork bigger.
Right.
Like I like the big special editions, and that's what I enjoy, and that's how I enjoy reading it. But if like someone reading Kingdom Come Small looks at Alex Ross's eyes like, I want to see this bigger, that's going to give them that moment to jump into something else.
Yeah, you can't pinch zoom on comics, unfortunately. So.
No, you can't.
No.
That format, like I said, is only going to work at that price point for old stuff that's been printed already. For newer stuff, you're not going to get that $9.99. There's no way they can put something out like that with all those pages, that format, for a decent price to buy, when a 32-page comic is almost the same price as a $9.99 format of Watchmen. You know what I'm saying? You just it's going to work with this in this time, you know. And most people are not going to pay $20, not every month. If they do it every 3 months, 4 times a year, it might work. But that's what they were discussing back at the end of the 90s, was going to a trade paperback route instead of floppies, and go to a collected edition of doing 6-part story all in one and just release it to the market. You know, it's I don't know.
It's funny because that's almost like how Netflix does their TV shows right now. They drop 6 episodes, you binge it, and then you wait until the next season.
Yeah.
But it's also a detriment to like the average comic reader now, because everyone writes for the trade predominantly. It's hard
so
to jump
true.
in.
It's so true.
An issue to somebody, like I have to say, like one series that was doing it right was Power Rangers, man. I was like, I've never been like a big Power Rangers reader, but like I was jumping in, like when I do like reviews and stuff like that, I always like read a couple pages, and I'm like, if it catches me, I'll keep reading, and if it gets me to the end of the issue, I'm like, that's a good issue because it captured me all the way. But every time I picked up an issue of Power Rangers, like I knew what was happening. They gave you enough context. They made you care about what was happening in the moment, and they told a whole story in every 22 pages. And to the credit to writers and artists right now are just like kind of going out of my head. But I think it's like Ryan. Like I'm not even gonna try, but they did a great job. Honestly, like even like from the art to the writing, they did a really good job making sure that like every issue you picked up, you knew what was happening. They give you just enough context so it wasn't like overbearing for the story, and they would tell their own thing, and they had an end point every time, and the story would continue. And that was a fantastic thing. It's a rare thing to find a 22-page comic that gives you everything you want in 22 pages these days.
Right. I get you.
And I think back in the day, it was easier. You can jump into any old issue of Spider-Man from like the 80s, old issues of Batman, and you can get something out of that comic. Like, especially back in the day when I was collecting, Jesus, man, like I didn't have like full runs of anything, and it was always piecemealing stuff, but like I could still get the gist of what was going on from one issue. Sometimes you're lucky to do that.
Yeah. And sometimes they would give you a story in issue 1 and then just prolong it for another 10 issues.
There's that too.
It's just a money grab.
Yeah. Or issue 2 was in a different series. Spider-Man was the first for that. Like,
I think it was the
spectacular.
Craven's Last Hunt or whatever. I think did that where they put it through all the different books.
Yeah.
Jeff Todd says Go Team Venture, an actual Venture Brothers fan. I love that cartoon, by the way. And a Fantastic Four anime would be cool. I agree with you. And you know what? I remember when they redid the X-Men 97 theme song or the opening, but it was done by a Japanese animation company. I was like, oh my God, I'll watch this from start to finish, no problem. If they did an FF like that, anime like that, I'd be totally like that. Totally down with that. Chad Stewart says, I heard that since Dynamite's comic Thundercats is doing so well, they're coming out with a Silverhawks comic next, which I will definitely get. Jay and I, we talked about that either, last week or 2 weeks ago. And so, yes, that is definitely a reality. Excuse me, Alfonso. Yes, Omar, you from Mexico. And so
Actually from Peru, but I grew up in Mexico.
All right, so there you go. And then we've got Mother Slug. I'm really curious, Omar, is that a Bob Ross painting behind you on the wall?
No, this is from a amazing artist called Heather Castles, goes by Upcycled Vintage Art. Sorry, my camera follows me. And she does, she basically puts awesome geek shit into paintings that she finds. And it gives you one of those things where you can put in your house, and unless you're looking for it, you're like, oh, that's a Star Destroyer. Like, you don't really know until like look. And I love her stuff. She's an immensely talented human being.
I can see it now. Yeah, it's crashed. It's a crashed Star Destroyer.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Upcycled Vintage Art. Stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
And
going back on our walls and stuff. She's great.
Yeah. I saw her stuff. She does real good stuff. She was at our June bash.
Yeah.
Nice lady. And going back, you know what came out this week? Sectors #1. If you remember Sectors.
No way. Sectors is back on print.
Wow.
Is that from
this man?
Right. Sectors.
Is that from Nacelle Comics? Is that
all right? Is
that
know?
Nacelle? Wow.
In a few weeks
cool.
was Biker Mice from Mars.
Biker Mice from Mars. That's right.
Nacelle's doing it. Eh? I heard about something that they were going to get into it, but amazing, good stuff, great stuff.
Random segue, but you know what series is the most 80s book on the shelves right now? It's kind of touched upon. It needs a friggin' action figure line like nobody's business. Rook Exodus.
Oh man.
Yeah.
1,000%. Feels like it has all the vehicles and all the things and like really cool costumes and oh my god.
The characters look cool. It's just fantastic. I think Jason Fabrik and Jeff Johns,
out of the park.
Brad Anderson, they're killing that book. I love it.
It's a great book. It's a great read, definitely. And you're right. Like visually, it's screaming for action figures, man.
Yeah, and like I said, nostalgia's coming back. You know, Biker Mice from Mars, Sectors. Mask did a little bit of a run before. You know what I mean? Like, I think Dynamite did Gatchaman. You know what I mean? Like Battle of the Planets, right? So
Alex Ross covers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Came out last week.
Sorry, say that again, Carlos.
The Dodgers won the World Series. Sorry to interrupt.
Hey, how do you like that? You know what? As a Blue Jay fan, I don't mind
Dodgers
that.
won the World Series. Incredible.
Because as long as the Yankees don't win, as a Blue Jay fan, I'm good with that. Sorry, American League East hate, man.
The East, so crazy. Oh man, but they made it interesting at the end, man. They made it pretty close. It was pretty great.
They bought a World Series.
They did.
Absolutely.
They always do. Those two teams spend the most. I mean, and Ohtani did nothing.
Did, but you didn't have to. He's got like 3 or 4 MVPs on the team with him.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Right?
But the MVP this year is the dude with the shiny teeth, man.
He's a Canadian man.
He is.
Oh yeah,
he's a freaking Canadian. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Baby.
Yeah.
So Natural Nate Marvel says getting ready for the fireworks here in LA. Well, congratulations if you are a Dodgers fan.
Congrats, unless you're a Padres fan or something.
Yes. Well, that's San Diego, so.
Freddie freaking Freeman, man. Freddie Freeman, Canadian, proud Canuck. Right?
Yep.
Awesome.
And he says he always thinks of his mom whenever he goes up to bat.
Absolutely.
So he thinks of Canada every time he's at the plate.
I think he's going to be MVP for sure.
Guaranteed MVP. And
That
now
would
we're
be
completely
great.
off topic. But anyway,
That's all good.
I was thinking Toxic Avenger came back. last week.
yes, see what I
Oh
mean?
my
Like
gosh,
it's
Toxic
all the
Avenger.
80s. It's all the 80s. And you know what? TMNT is the property that will not die. As a matter of
No,
fact,
no.
The Last Ronin, freaking incredible book. Absolutely incredible.
Let me
The
tell
new
you,
series is also great.
here's my Toxic Avenger story. So I'm at a convention and I bump into this old guy and I go, I'm sorry. He goes, oh, you're a retailer here? Yeah. I go, this is my booth. He goes, oh, I created the Toxic Avenger. I go, what the heck is that? The director, the movie.
Yeah.
That was that. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Probably about like 8 years ago. So.
Yeah. He's a little guy actually, but he's really talented actually. He's got a lot of. He's funny too. He's a funny little guy.
Well,
really
speaking
go
of,
back
speaking of,
Era where,
sorry,
we really need to go back to an era where we had so many inappropriate kid shows from like adult properties, like Toxic, RoboCop, Cops, Police.
Yeah. R-rated films, which became toy lines. Absolutely
it's
ridiculous.
amazing when you think about it.
Bob, are you not watching the cartoons these days? SpongeBob and all those are like adult oriented jokes.
No, yeah, but actual R-rated properties becoming cartoons. You know that I think that's what Omar is getting at because
they try to really like dumb them down to their basic. It's hilarious.
Especially RoboCop. RoboCop's mad violent.
Dude, I remember the figures that had like the cap gun on the back.
So speaking of things that are like violent and kind of like gross, Halloween's around the corner. I think we got less than 24 hours. Is there a is there?
You got one.
I think 5 minutes.
You got
well, I don't count it.
5 minutes.
I don't count it in the daytime.
What
right?
time is it now?
It's 11:56 Eastern time, but like I don't count 9 o'clock in the morning as Halloween. Halloween is like 7 o'clock when it's dark and the kids are out.
Okay.
Is it not dark at 1 a.m.?
No, but he means when they're getting ready to go trick or treating, guys. Come on, let's be. You're picking on poor Steve, man. You all got kids. Man. Relax.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, we should do at midnight get all together.
You know what?
Knocking on people's doors, trick or treating right at midnight.
I keep forgetting. Both of you guys own comic stores, so you will see kids as early as 9 o'clock tomorrow. So I keep forgetting that. So.
We're gonna have to wait because we open at 11.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good. So, worst candy. Worst candy you ever got. Worst candy you ever got for Halloween.
Yes, I agree with Carlos. Candy corn. That shit is disgusting.
Candy corn is disgusting.
Candy corn is disgusting.
Black licorice and candy corn. The two words.
There's also one, and Omar, I don't know if they would have been, if they still had this when you would have been trick or treating, if you trick or treated up here at all. There's one that used to come in like an orange and black, and they would have like bats and stuff on the wrapper.
Oh God, those are terrible.
And
that was like taffy.
It was like taffy, but
taffy.
wax. It was absolutely. It was like they took
gross.
petroleum or something and dyed it. It was the worst. Anytime I saw that, it was like, nope, next.
Yeah. What about you, Omar? What's the worst? What's the worst candy for you?
I can't do licorice, man. Like black licorice.
Black
licorice is terrible.
It's Zambuca, which should be a drink for alcohol for adults.
See, I can do the Zambuca, but I can't do black licorice.
I'll give it like flavor, but
no. If it had the black licorice had actual alcohol in it, then we'd probably like it a little bit more.
It'd grow after a while,
yeah.
Mother Celeste says Pop Rocks is horrible. Popping plastic. I don't think I've ever had that.
It's the one that pops in your mouth like a.
We sell Pop Rocks at the store.
Get out of town, Dave.
Goes, candy corn is actually wax.
Hilarious.
All I know is it looks disgusting. It
tastes disgusting. It is so gross. Oh my gosh.
Things you can't get anymore. Candied cigarettes.
No, those are awesome. Those are
Carlos.
I think
Jay.
You can't get them anymore these days.
Carlos and Jay, you might remember when the Popeye cigarettes we got actually had the red dot on the end that looked like you were smoking it.
No, but
and then they got rid of the red dot.
No, but there was even one which is better. It was this bubble gum, but it had sugar. It had powdered sugar in it. So when you blew into the wrapper, the freaking sugar would blow out. It would look like you were actually like smoking.
That was cocaine.
That was your. Were you trick or treating in Miami, Jay? Is that what you're doing in the 80s?
Oh, it's all that blow.
The chocolate bag. You know,
All that blow.
Listen, I sell all that shit at the shop, man. I gotta give you a pack.
Carlos's store is like a walk down
It
nostalgia
is.
lane.
It is.
When it comes to candy.
I gotta make it down one of these days. It's on my list.
Let me tell you something about Pop Rocks. Ready? I don't know. It's rated R. So I found out from a young couple, they came in and bought like 20 packs of Pop Rocks, different flavors. And I go, "Are you guys addicted? What's going on here?" And he's been a customer for years. He goes, "It's a new thing." I go, "What's a new thing?" He goes, "Listen, she puts it in her mouth and she sucks my dick."
No, it's like the new.
Oh my god!
Well,
Pop! Oh my god!
What's wrong with the generation? They
These
use
people
Pop
are
Rocks
fucked.
jobs now.
Oh my god! That's gotta hurt.
Nah, son.
That's
Nah,
gotta
son.
hurt.
Nah, son. Nah.
Like
I don't understand, but that's what they did, man. And then
one of those things gets into your that I don't even want to think about that, man.
it's
That's gonna burn.
pop.
That is gonna burn like crazy. You know what? We are. All right, guys. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
Tonight it's over.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Wow. Like the thing about it is, who was the first one to go, "Hey, let's try that"?
Who?
No, I'm just thinking like, who in the right mind would go, "Let's try that"?
Always a pioneer.
It's
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure, Omar. You're absolutely correct.
I mean,
but
what was it? What was it called? Who was it? It was Richard Gere and fucking hamsters. Like, come on, like things are.
It was gerbil.
allegedly.
And now I'm dating myself, right?
Yeah.
I'm a terrible date, by the way. I'll just escort myself.
Mother Slugs has all the bad candy. He says Pixie Sticks was a bad candy to give kids, teaching them to use a straw to suck powder. Haha, that is true.
Yeah,
That's true.
By the way, they'd be bouncing off the walls in Pixie. That's pure. That's like some god awful like crazy sugar.
If it came with a card of some sort, so you could do the lines, then it'd be even worse.
That'd be hilarious. That'd be so wrong on so many levels.
We ate all that candy in our time. Do you remember bouncing off the walls?
Nah.
No, because I was.
There's all kinds of shit and everything these days. Like
It's all
sugar, it's all bunch.
Our parents remember us bouncing off the walls because they couldn't stop us. That's the problem.
This wasn't necessarily a Halloween candy, but I remembered Big League Chew.
Yeah.
They
still basically was like tobacco.
It was emulating tobacco. Yeah,
it was emulating tobacco, and it was shredded gum.
Yeah,
it was shredded gum.
How about Cracker Jack? Remember Cracker?
Yeah, Cracker Jack still exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got those.
Yeah.
Cracker Jack.
Does it still come in the box with the dude on the cover?
Comes on the
box. The dog
on the cover, yeah.
Yeah, it comes in bags now as well, and you still get you get it's not even a toy anymore. It's kind of like a little booklet and stuff.
Yeah. The day after Halloween was great, but it was the day after when you trade candy with your buddies. That was
that was so cool.
When you hid your candy from your siblings, that's for sure.
I'm an only child, so I was always good. No one's thieving my stuff.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. Getting off candies. Favorite horror movie.
Here's Kevin.
American Werewolf in London.
Boom.
Just because that was like one of the first. I don't know if I'm dating myself, but remember back in the 80s, early 80s, Toronto Sun, you'd have to get these 3D glasses in the newspaper because on Friday they were going to do a 3D horror movie, and we'd sit there waiting for this. I can't remember the movie, but then the first real horror movie I watched was American Werewolf in London, and that freaked the shit out of me back then.
His transformation when you saw his hand expanding and the snout coming out, man,
that was crazy.
Scared me for days.
That was mine, so I don't know. How about yours, Omar?
For me, it's a three-way tie. I can never decide. One is American Werewolf in London. If anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge werewolf fan. In fact, the comic I'm working on is a lycanthropic piece. But there's The Thing. You got to give The Thing its credit. Like The
Thing's great.
Everything And if you haven't seen the new 4K transfer of it, I highly recommend it. It's incredible. And probably, I know it's not exactly a horror movie per se, but, well, it is a horror movie. The first horror movie I ever saw, because my mom was that kind of person, was Alien. I saw it when I was 3 years old. I've loved that franchise ever since. My mother was not one of those people who's like, my kids aren't going to watch this stuff. No, they're going to watch it with me.
Right.
And I thank her every day for that, because
Nice.
I got to see a lot of cool things. The kids stuff always freaked me out. Like the stuff I could actually tangibly understand.
Yeah.
But the stuff as adults I always thought was just really cool.
Right. What about you, Jay?
Honestly, I'm with Omar. There are a lot of favorites for sure. But I guess if I was to pick an outlier, something that really kind of freaked me out, but at the same time was really, really, I think occult movies are really interesting for me. I like this movie. Not a lot of people know it anymore. It's called Warlock. I thought that was a really.
I
neat film.
remember that.
Yeah, Warlock was really cool. Yeah, it always got me like stabbing up people's eyes and using them to like a compass to find things. You know what I mean? Like ripping somebody's tongue. It was just that type of psychological and also like the stuff you don't want to hear about that people do to each other. Because like slasher films are slasher films. You know what I mean? Scream, Mike Myers, this and that. But when you're freaking talking about somebody who's trying to bring about the end of the world by bringing the apocalypse, that kind of gets to me. Being a good Christian boy. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff like. It really kind of hits you. It's like, what the fuck? Like, what the hell am I watching right now? And I think Omen. was
Omen. You know what it was about for me with the Omen? It was the dogs. It was the dogs yelling outside the church, and I would have been like 8 or whatever or 7. Scared the hell out of me. So that one, American Werewolf in London, for me. Cujo for some reason.
Cujo, yeah.
The hell out of me, man.
Good goalie.
More so than movies, I'm gonna one up your question. More so than movies, what was the moment that scared you the most in a horror movie? Like as a kid, like what was that thing that like you can remember vividly? Like for me, I always remember People Under the Stairs by Wes Craven. When they go to the basement,
right?
All the shit, and then they run up the stairs. That moment where the hands just come and grab the legs and they pull the kid under the stairs. That's why when I was younger, I was running up the stairs two at a time. I could never time my steps.
There's something about a dark basement. I agree with you. When you're a kid. Yeah, that's a good question. I got to think about that a little bit. Carlos, what about you?
I want to say, I think the movie was Nosferatu.
About the vampire.
The old one. Is that the one? And because I had an aunt that looked like that, and I remember watching it.
Big fingernails?
The nose, the whole look, and it's the part where he's like walking and then he turns towards the camera and you see that face. And every time my aunt would come over, that gave me like just run away. That gave me the bad vibes. So maybe that scene, but there's probably more disgusting scenes out there, it's always the funny one. I don't know if it's scary, but it's always the ones where you find yourself yelling at the screen like at Michael Myers, where they're running and running and running, and he's just walking, but he always catches up. It's like run, and he's catching up, and then run, and so that. I don't know if there's anything scary that I can't remember offhand. So,
Jay.
Yeah, you know what? It's not really so much scary. I think the jump scares they're fleeting. I think that's not what really scares you is when it's kind of psychological. Like, I always enjoyed. It wasn't really scary, but I always enjoyed the idea that where somebody like Scream is actually a really good idea. Somebody calls you in the middle of the night and says, particularly for girls, right? Like, who am I looking at? Like, I want to know who I'm talking to, but I also want to know who I'm looking at, right? It's like he's outside somewhere, right? He's right outside. It's that creep factor, you know what I mean? Where like, you don't know, like this person is watching you and they can kill you at any time. And I think that's really what it is. Like, they're in the house, but you don't know when they're actually gonna attack you, right? And that's where I think really that unsettling nature. I kind of like when you're walking down the stairs, you get grabbed by 2 legs, and again, you don't know when it's going to happen, right? But I think that's probably the one that really keeps me up. That's what kind of keeps me up at night sometimes. Maybe somebody's in the house, maybe they're watching. That's
What's the name of that movie? There's one. It's called The Phone or something. It's from the '80s, but The whole premise is someone is on the phone with the girl the whole movie, and then like they're calling the police, and they're like, the call's coming from inside the house, and like that's the big twist.
Yes.
And they've been like watching them, and they had no idea.
Why didn't she hang?
Nature.
Why didn't she just hang up?
He does, but he keeps calling back, and then she keeps.
So why not leave it off the hook?
That's a 10-minute movie, Carlos.
Yeah.
For me, I think I'm just trying to remember if it's
not a horror movie.
Probably Friday the 13th. Sorry, say that again, Omar.
I said it's not a horror movie unless people are making mistakes. That's the whole
and weird mistakes too.
The dumb thing to get the movie going. Otherwise, the movie never happens.
Yeah. For me, the jump scare, I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, and I don't even know if it would be scary now, but it was when Jason or whoever came out of the lake. Is that Mike Myers?
That's Jason. Yeah,
that was Jason.
When Jason came out of the
mom.
lake,
that was Jason's mom. That wasn't even Jason. No, that was Jason. That was Jason.
That was Jason. So when he came
Jason.
out of the lake and like grabbed the boat or something, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah. You thought everything was good, and then
the throwaway.
You know what's a good one right now? Terrifier. I don't know if you have watched Terrifier. That's a throwback to old horror story. It's crazy, just very gory right now. I believe it's Terrifier 3 that just came out. So
check
that out.
Yeah, no horror. You know, I'd probably say that it's probably a pretty healthy genre right now. When you think of like the movies, the way that they're made, how quickly they can come out, and the following they have, you know, you make a good horror movie, you're going to be all right. Yeah. Let's take a look at some of these ones. Mother Slug, America's #1 most eaten candy around Halloween is Reese's Pieces cups, peanut butter cups. Always like getting those. Mother Slug says 1984 John Carpenter's The Thing. Yeah, absolute classic.
Okay.
Frankie says Fright Night is my jam.
Fright Night, yeah.
Evil Ed.
Nolan, Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. I don't think I've ever seen that.
No.
It's the original Legend. It's the first time they adapted I Am Legend. They did it.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
It's Last Man on Earth. They did Omega Man in the 80s, and then they did I Am Legend with Will Smith.
I Am Legend.
Very cool. Bat Fan #1 says The Exorcist. Mother Slug with Geiger, Mastermind of the Sick. Art, great man he was. Yeah, he his design sense. It's always I think of Geiger, and I also think of Mobius in terms of like the same sort of aesthetic. Like they weren't the same, but they kind of achieved the same thing artistically. Dave says It. And then Arnold. Hey, Arnold, friend of the show. Exorcist was what did it to me as a kid. You know, it's kind of weird.
Arnold,
sorry, say that again.
It's Arnold Trinidadi. Who's your daddy? Who's your
That's right. When Linda Blair had her head spinning backwards in the yeah. Amityville 2.
Amityville. Remember Blair Witch Project?
Yep.
That was such a weird movie, man.
That'd be busy watching that.
That was the problem. It was a shaky cam. I can't do that. I can't watch shaky cam. Yeah, I think people threw up more than they were scared.
Bat Fan says the scariest moment for me is Creep Show. The old man who was has a cockroach infestation, and they start coming out of him. Yeah, that would probably get me too.
Yeah, creepy crawlies. Yeah, I think it sends shivers up most people's spines.
Yeah. Mother Slug, do you know the original Nosferatu black and white movies were being burnt back in the day? Really? Due to Bram Stoker's novel about Dracula. I did not know that. You guys are gonna have to help me up on this one. Rodan scene where 3 men in the mine get pulled under the water.
I think that's Godzilla. Rodan, I think that's Rodan. And I think that's probably a very as a kid, things can really get to you, right? Like scenes which are too close to the chest, right? So
scariest TV show. Now that's hard to answer the question to answer. For me, it was Tales of the Dark Side. That's Mother Slug. That was a good one.
The Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, it's weird because I was on another podcast a few weeks ago, and we were talking about scary stuff. And for me, there's an episode of The X-Files where the hillbilly family has been inbreeding with the family, and when they pull the mother out from underneath,
Yeah,
the
she was
bed,
gross, man.
I'm like, oh my god, this is the damn nastiest thing I've ever seen. So that for me, that X-Files episode was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that was just it was disturbing more than anything else. And as a
Oh
matter of
yeah,
fact, yeah, I think there is something where they won't re-air it actually on television. I think
I'm not surprised.
you can only see it now on the DVD collection or Blu-ray collection. I think that's actually what's happened.
Yeah, that was nuts. Hitchcock, The Birds always freaked me out as a kid. Oh, he was able to play on your mind. Omega Man was 71.
Oh.
So was Omega Man, that was with Charlton Heston, right? Yeah. Okay. I think I do remember it. And then Mother Slug says 1980 Terror Train is a scary movie. Watch it. Jamie Lee Curtis stars in it. So was that pre-Halloween or post-Halloween?
I think that was pre-Halloween, 1980. I think it was pre.
No, Halloween came out in
71, right?
Oh, was it? Was it? Oh, wow. Okay.
In the 70s, yeah.
Okay.
Halloween came in the 70s?
Yeah. Pretty
No,
sure.
70, 78, 79, around there.
I think 77, 78. I could be dead wrong,
Okay.
but
Nolan says
It was 78 according to Google. 1978.
wow. Okay, so Nolan says TV is Twilight Zone for him.
so
The
good.
scene where with Shatner with the thing on the plane wing.
Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
That's right, man. That was always a good episode. Arnold again with most recommended show at Frightmare in the Falls Convention last weekend was Terrifier. So there you go, Carlos. I was warned not to have a full stomach before watching. You know what though? I saw The Substance with Demi Moore. Don't watch that if you're eating. I'll tell you that straight right now. The body horror in that is next level.
Yeah, I've heard some really crazy things. So
yeah, like people passing out in the theater and stuff like that.
It's just it's alien all over again.
You know what? Not just Alien, also a little bit of The Thing. It's got, you know, like when in The Thing where they find that creature and it's got everybody kind of like morphed together.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of body horror like that in The Substance.
That is just crazy.
Without getting too spoilerish. And Mother Slug, Tales from the Dark Side is totally different from Tales from the Crypt. Just watch the beginning opening to the show. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh wow, what a night, guys! Holy crap!
This was great. This was great chopping it up with Carlos and Omar for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for
we should definitely have you guys back on for sure. Omar, where are you working on right now, and how can people where's your store, and how can people reach you?
Our store is located in Newmarket. We're at 200 Main Street South here on our old Main Street in Newmarket. What am I working on right now? The Halloween party for tomorrow, but generally speaking, the next thing we're doing is kind of like a holiday market where we're going to do a lead up to Christmas, where we're going to invite creators up Saturday and Sunday now that we're open on Sundays. And yeah, just try to get people to, like I said, Newmarket's really good for shopping local and shopping outside of the big box store. So try to get more spotlight on indie books and try to push some more independent stuff. That's the plan right now.
Awesome. Carlos, how can people reach you, and where's your store located, and what are you working on?
We're in Mississauga, Ontario, 1400 Aimco Street, Unit 1. Reach us at through our website or Gotham Central CC on all social media channels. What do we got coming out? Right now, we're in the middle of our spring cleanup in the fall. We're organizing all our books because convention season's over, so we're getting all our back stock back in order and getting it online. What we got coming up is we got a return of Ghost Machine to the store. November 23rd, Saturday, we got Francis Manapul, Sean Daly come and do signings. We have the release of Rocket Fellers #1, which is created by Peter Tomasi and Francis Manapul, and we'll be releasing our exclusive. We're limited to 500 this week or this coming week on our website, drawn with a special cover by Sean Daly. So it's a homage to X-Men 31. It's pretty fun book. It's geared towards younger readers and stuff. So it's Ghost Machine. They're doing it right. It's like Image over again.
Excellent.
A little bit harder, so that cover is going to look spectacular.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
I said Sean's a hell of an artist, so the cover is going to look spectacular.
Yeah, Sean's great. I love Sean. He's a great you know, he was in a band and then he just started drawing again, and now he's doing comics, which is pretty cool. So, and it's a show that I was talking to Steve. We should always do like a local talent show of all the great creators that are just in the Southern Ontario area. Fantastic. Watch them grow as comic book writers and comic book creators and artists. So it's a good stuff. A lot of great talent, like Omar said. We have a lot of great talent. So
absolutely. Well, Steve, amazing night. Any last words before we log off?
No, I just want to thank our guests for spending a couple hours with us, chopping it up. We had a great time. Always amazing insight from you guys, and not only just like what was going on in the comic book world, but also like the life of a retailer. We kind of take it for granted, right? When we walk into a store, that these books just appear magically. You know, we obviously know that there's some hard work behind it, but we don't really know what you guys have to go through to help us enjoy the medium that we love so much. So thank you for sharing all that.
what did I say to you yesterday, Steve?
It's time to do a doc. Time to do a doc.
But besides that, I said, come spend the day with us comic retailers, and then you realize that it's not a fun time. We got so much going on. We work hard, you know, so that's why you got to always support. Pick up your pull list. That's the most important part. That's what causes a lot of problem in our stores. You know, guys that I want this, and this, and they don't show up. So, you know, that's the biggest reason why we don't want to do pull lists after 2 weeks. We just put everything back. We have great customers, but always support the local stores. It doesn't matter. Your small hobby shops, your bigger hobby shops, support everybody. That's always local, you know.
Yeah, definitely visit every comic shop you can, whatever city you're in. Go visit, check them out. Everyone's got so many different things going on, and even if sometimes it's a couple dollars more expensive than Amazon, support the retailers, guys. Everyone's working super hard, and like, you know, they're doing their thing. They're doing it because they love it. So support.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely, guys. Please subscribe to both of these guys on their social media channels. Definitely, guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully, you guys will come back. We'd love to have you, and it's been great hanging out with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Comics Asylum. Thank you.
No worries. Our pleasure, and Mega J Retro as well too. Thanks, guys, and keep it indie.
Keep it indie. Peace.
Yes.